He is not the one who challenges you openly. He is the one who smiles at you, who knows exactly where you are soft, exactly what you are afraid to lose, and exactly how to use that information in rooms you will never be invited into. He has been doing it for months, maybe longer, and you have been giving him everything he needed every time you trusted him. You have already felt the cost of it, the relationship that cooled for no reason you could name, the opportunity that went to someone less qualified. The moment you realized the story people believed about you was not the story you told, and you could not figure out where it started. What you called friendship, he called intelligence gathering. Machiavelli did not outsmart people because he was louder or more feared. He understood what most men learn only after being destroyed. The person who controls what others believe controls the outcome, long before anyone realizes a game is being played. These are his 15 laws of strategic power. Every one of them is already being used on you by someone who learned them without ever reading a word he wrote. There is a man you have sat across from in a meeting, a negotiation, a conversation you thought was casual. You told him more than you meant to, not secrets. Your frustration with how long something was taking, your excitement when you mentioned the new opportunity, your need to explain yourself when the decision went a different way. You thought you were being honest. He thought you were being useful. Law 1. Never show all your cards. He is not processing what you say. He is cataloging what you cannot stop yourself from showing. Your impatience tells him your deadline. Your excitement tells him your ceiling. Your explanation tells him you are not certain you have the leverage to simply act. Every piece of information you volunteer without being asked is a resource handed to someone who has not decided yet whether they are your ally. Law 2. Control your emotions. You have watched what happens when someone loses their composure in a room. The way the temperature shifts, the way everyone recalibrates, quietly, without a word, who is in control and who just handed it over. Whoever reacted is never whoever wins that exchange. Not because they were wrong, because they revealed what they could not contain. That moment gets remembered. Not the argument, not the content, not whether he had a point, the fact that he broke. And from that moment forward, everyone in that room knows exactly where to press if they need him off his game. They file it, they use it, not cruelly, strategically, because that is what people do with information you hand them for free. Machiavelli watched men lose entire positions not through bad strategy, but through a single moment of visible anger that told everyone present exactly where they were soft. Staying cold is not feeling nothing. It is deciding that your reaction was worth more than the audience deserved to see. You have watched someone make themselves indispensable, maybe at work. The person who quietly became the only one who knew how a critical system operated, who held relationships no one else had built, who solved the category of problem that no one else had bothered to learn. Nobody gave him that position. He constructed it deliberately, over time, while everyone else was focused on being liked. Law 3. Make people depend on you. The safest position is not being respected. It is being necessary. Respect is social. Necessity is structural. Whoever controls something others cannot easily replicate or replace is not operating on goodwill. They are operating on leverage that exists independent of whether anyone likes them on a given Tuesday. Every skill you build that others cannot duplicate, every problem you solve that no one else will touch, every relationship you hold that others cannot access. These are not just advantages. They are insurance against the moment when goodwill runs out. Law 4. Strike first. There is a moment most men recognize only in hindsight. The situation that had been forming for months while they held still. The rival who was quietly consolidating. The relationship that was cooling and needed a direct conversation they kept postponing. The position that was becoming vulnerable while they told themselves it was too early to act. They saw it. They waited because moving felt premature, because they wanted to be certain, because acting before the problem was obvious felt aggressive. By the time it felt necessary, it was expensive. The rival was already established. The relationship was already damaged past the point where one conversation could fix it. The position was already gone. The window had been open for 6 months. They had simply decided, without deciding, to let it close. Hesitation is never neutral. It is a decision to let someone else define the terms, shape the ground, and choose the battlefield. Moving early controls what the situation becomes. Waiting for certainty means it never arrives cleanly. And while you were waiting, someone else was spending that time deciding what your options would be. Strike first does not mean act without thought. It means understanding that every day a problem is allowed to develop on its own is a day it is getting harder to solve on yours. The one who damaged your reputation did not do it in one conversation. He did it across 20 of them, each one small enough to seem like nothing, each one placing a slightly different frame around who you are until the frame became the fact. He never accused you directly. He simply repeated one version of you in enough rooms that decision-makers began seeing every late reply, every missed detail, every ordinary human mistake as confirmation of the story he had already written. By the time you felt it, it was already what people believed. You were not defending yourself against an accusation. You were defending yourself against a consensus. Law 5. Protect your reputation. Your reputation arrives before you do and stays after you leave. It is built almost entirely in rooms you are not in, by people repeating the version of you that serves their purposes. The only defense is to make the narrative yours before someone else claims it, which means understanding that silence in those rooms is not neutrality. When a story is being told about you and you are not present to correct it, absence reads as confirmation. Law 6. Keep your plans invisible. You have watched someone announce something before it was done. A business idea shared too early. A job they were pursuing mentioned in casual conversation. A position they were building toward that suddenly had 3 other people competing for it. People who had not been interested until they heard someone else was. The announcement created the opposition. Before he said anything, there was nothing to stop. The moment he said it out loud, he handed everyone with a competing interest both the target and the timeline. Whoever tells the room their next move will always find someone has already been there waiting, not to congratulate them, but to make sure they do not arrive. Unfinished power is the most vulnerable kind because it can still be stopped. Finished power simply exists and must be dealt with. Machiavelli understood that announcing ambition is an invitation to opposition, that the gap between what you are building and what you have declared is the window in which everything can be taken. Build quietly. Let the outcome exist before anyone thought to stop it. Show them what you built, not what you are building. Subscribe. The men on this channel are done being the last ones to understand what is happening around them. Every episode goes one level deeper into the system and how to run it yourself instead of having it run on you. He became more valuable the moment he became less available, not because anything changed about what he offered, because he stopped being guaranteed. The calls that used to come back immediately started taking a day. The meetings he used to clear his schedule for now required planning. Nothing dramatic, just enough friction that the people around him recalibrated, started preparing more before they reached out, started valuing the response when it came, started noticing the absence in a way they had never once noticed the presence. Law 7. Use absence to gain respect. Always available means never truly wanted, just used. Presence without scarcity destroys value quietly, without announcement, until one day you realize you are the person everyone calls last because they know you will always be there. Absence resets that dynamic. It reminds the room that you are not guaranteed. And someone who is not guaranteed is treated differently than someone who has made himself a fixture that everyone has learned to take for granted. Law 8. Turn enemies into stepping stones. Every person who has moved against you has handed you something in the process, information about their methods, their character, how much they fear what you represent. Most men treat opposition as a problem to survive and move past. The more useful read is that it is a resource. Think about the colleague who went out of his way to undermine you, the partner who positioned himself against you when the stakes got real. At the time, it felt like damage. What it actually was, a complete picture of how that person operates under pressure, what he is willing to do when he thinks no one is watching, and exactly how far he will go when he decides you are a threat. You now know something about him that took him years to reveal and cost him nothing to give you. That is not a loss. That is intelligence. The enemy who reveals himself gives you more than the ally who stays hidden. The conflict that tests you shows you exactly where you are solid and where you are not. Information that comfort would never surface. The question is not whether you can endure opposition. It is whether you are extracting everything it is handing you while it lasts. There was a point where his approval felt easy to get. He agreed with most things, responded warmly, made everyone feel included. And then something shifted, not dramatically, but enough that you noticed. His response time slowed. His feedback got harder to read. You were not sure where you stood anymore, and that uncertainty changed how you operated around him. You prepared more. You paid closer attention. You worked harder for the same result you used to get without thinking about it. He had not changed his standards. He had changed his availability, and it worked. Law 9. Keep people competing for your approval. Approval that is easy to get will not be held long. When there is no competition for something, people stop valuing it, including your regard, your time, your endorsement. A small amount of uncertainty keeps people moving in your direction. Not cruelty, not unpredictability for its own sake. Just enough distance that access to you feels earned rather than automatic. Making everyone equally comfortable holds a room very differently than making your approval something worth having. Law 10. Silence is your greatest weapon. Most men fill silence because it unsettles them. They explain when they should say nothing. They justify when they should hold still. They offer their reasoning to people who have not earned the right to it, and in doing so, hand over the only leverage they had in the exchange. Staying quiet forces the other person to fill the gap. And people fill silence with their own fear, their own assumptions, their own worst read of the situation. You do not have to construct a threat. You simply have to stop removing one. Whoever speaks last, or not at all, is rarely the one who loses. 6 months before it became a crisis, it was manageable. The rival was still consolidating. The gap was still closable. The problem had a cost attached to it, but the cost was still small enough that addressing it felt optional, premature even. So, nothing happened. And the problem did what unaddressed problems always do. It compounded. By the time acting felt necessary, the cost had multiplied 4 times and the options had narrowed to 1. Law 11. Crush threats before they grow. A small problem solved early costs almost nothing. The same problem left alone doubles its price every time you choose not to address it. Letting a rival consolidate, letting a conflict simmer, letting a weakness in your position go unaddressed because confronting it feels premature. That is not patience. That is paying interest on a debt you have already decided to carry. The window to act cheaply is always earlier than it feels comfortable to act. Law 12. Always appear strong. There were 2 men in that room. One walked in uncertain and let it show, in the way he qualified his statements, in the pause before he answered, in the way he looked for confirmation before he committed to a position. The other walked in equally uncertain and let none of it show. He spoke first. He held his position when challenged. He did not look for agreement before he offered his read. By the end of the meeting, the room had decided one of them knew what he was doing. It was not the one who was more prepared. Perception precedes outcome. Projecting certainty in the presence of real uncertainty shapes how everyone around you behaves, what options they think they have, what challenges they think are worth making, what they decide is possible against you. You do not have to be unshakable. You have to appear it long enough for the room to act accordingly. That appearance, held consistently, eventually becomes the reality everyone else builds their decisions around. By the time anyone noticed what he had built, it was already done. He had not announced it. He had not campaigned for it. He had simply spent 18 months having the right conversations, positioning himself at the right intersections, extending the right favors before they were asked for. When the decision got made, his name was already the obvious answer. Not because he had lobbied for it, but because he had made himself the inevitable conclusion to a process that was already in motion before most people knew there was a process. Law 13. Build power in the shadows. Visible accumulation invites visible opposition. Quietly building relationships, quietly acquiring leverage, quietly positioning yourself in the places where decisions get made, that draws no resistance the way announcing ambitions does. No one knew to resist until it was already done. Build in the open, and you spend half your energy defending what you are building. Build quietly, and the thing exists before anyone thought to stop it. Law 14. Use fear to keep people in line. This is the most misread principle in everything Machiavelli wrote, because people hear fear and think cruelty. That is not what it means. It means consequences. Someone known to follow through, who does not absorb betrayal quietly, who does not let violations go unaddressed, who makes it consistently clear that there is a real cost to crossing him. That person is treated differently than someone who absorbs whatever he is given and calls it patience. You do not have to be feared the way a tyrant is feared. You have to be the kind of person where others pause before they decide to test you because they already know the answer. Most men can name the thing they held on to too long, the partnership that had already stopped working but felt too established to end, the loyalty they kept extending past the point where it was returned because ending it felt harsh, felt disloyal, felt like an admission that they had misjudged something they had invested years in. And while they held it, everything they could have built with those same resources stayed unbuilt. The cost was not just the thing itself. It was the compounding opportunity they could not access while their hands were full of something that had already stopped serving them. Law 15. Cut off weakness without mercy. Machiavelli did not mean this as brutality. He meant it as clarity. The understanding that every resource kept committed to something no longer working is a resource withheld from something that could. Whoever cannot cut cleanly will always be managed by whatever they cannot bring themselves to release. This applies to relationships, to habits, to the version of yourself that other people need you to stay because it is convenient for them. The cut is not the cruelty. The delay is. The men who ran these 15 laws did not do so because they were born into power or because the world was fair to them. They did it because they understood the system clearly enough to stop pretending it was something other than what it was. Every law in this episode is already in operation around you. The only variable is whether you are the one running it or the one it is being run on. That is not a small distinction. It is the only one that matters. You already know what you are. Finally ruthless.